Friedrich-Naumann Foundation Wiesbaden office and Friedrich-Naumann Foundation South Asia. I would like to welcome all of you to our web talk, Global Europe, Global Expectations, Assessing the EU Role in South Asia. The basis of this web talk was a global initiative that Friedrich-Naumann Foundation took in 2020. You all know that we live in a world of change, and also for the EU, some major parameters have changed over the last years. And Friedrich-Naumann Foundation took the challenge of analyzing these changes and also asking the question of how do the changes within Europe and within the world actually change the relationship that the EU has with global partners in the various regions in the world. This is why in 2020, it was nearly on the day 1 year ago, FNF published a global publication that actually discussed the global relationships that the EU had, and also giving it a critical view of what the European Union can do better to better engage and cater to the needs of various regions and develop more impactful relations. We covered perspectives of 5 world regions. And today we are talking with Dr. Nadia Farouk. She was the author of the chapter on South Asia. She's a Pakistani economist, currently working as a research fellow at Georgia State University in the US. A bit later, we will be hopefully joined by Ms. Ria Schröder. She's a member of parliament of the Liberal Parliamentary Group and the spokesperson for education. She's also the deputy chairperson of the Liberal Party in Hamburg and a member of the FDP Federal Executive Board and a lawyer by profession. Unfortunately, she cannot join us today right at the beginning because of some commitments in Parliament and because of the budget weeks. But of course, this is what political life is about, but it should not deter us from starting our discussion and delving a bit deeper into the questions of EU-South Asian relations. And I'm really grateful that my colleague Charles Luginage, who's the head of the Asia desk at our head office in Potsdam, has taken the initiative of organizing this whole webinar and also of being the moderator here. So thank you, Charles, for being with us and having taken that initiative. And over to you for starting and leading the discussion. Thank you so much. And to all of you, have a good, fruitful, and hopefully also informative session.
Thank you very much, Birgit. Yes, I was already introduced. So since our time is somehow limited, I will briefly present our speakers. They will have a couple of minutes for input statements. And then I put some questions and will open the floor to you, distinguished guests. Ria Schröder will probably join us, as you said, Birgit, slightly later. My colleague, Birgit Lam, who is the head of Pakistan office and is looking as well towards Afghanistan, is present and is an expert in this field as well. So I will exploit the situation and ask you some questions in order to make it even more round for our audience. So you can boost your Pakistani knowledge of the region, and of course will contribute significantly to our discussion. But back to our special main guest, Dr. Nadia Farouk. She holds a PhD in economics and is currently a research scholar at Georgia State University in the United States. She has vast experience in public policy, economic research, analysis, economic modeling, and policy design. She has more than 15 years of work experience as a macroeconomist economic consultant and policy expert with multilateral organizations, including the Asian Development Bank. And she has contributed to several articles and books on economics and economic policy. Now she's with us currently in Atlanta, if I understood it rightly. Very welcome, a warm welcome, Nadia. I know you have prepared a small presentation, smaller, bigger presentation, which compiles your article very well. So if I may kindly ask you to start with your presentation.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Birgit. Thank you so much for inviting me here. So let me share my screen. Yes. Can you see my screen now? Is it visible?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Sorry, let me start from here. Okay. So hello, good morning, good evening, everyone, from which part of the world you are right now. So it's 11:36 right here in Asia, Eastern Standard Time, Atlanta, Georgia. So I was privileged to be part of that book or that report. So my topic was the EU's role in South Asia. So South Asia consists of 8 countries, including Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Maldives, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan. So its location is very prime because most of the trade routes of Southeast Asia, South Asia, they pass through, and to European Union, they pass through this region. And its total population is almost a quarter of the total world's population. Almost 2 billion people live in this region. But unfortunately, the contribution in world trade is less than 5%, which is too low. And mainly the countries involved in this region are lower or middle income countries. They are still growing and they need a lot of attention of like European Union and other fellows as well. I mean, countries that they can help them to grow and lift their economies, especially after COVID and the Russia-Ukraine war crisis. So yes, this region has its immense importance looking at the trade and different economic and financial aspects. So there are so many ways where EU or European Union is, working with these countries or this part of the world, and they are also facilitating, but still there is margin looking at the economic ties. So this is one of the greatest initiative of, and I think before 50 years before it decided in United Nations conference to lift up the economies of the lower middle or middle income countries, and they started this GSP, which is Generalized System of Preferences. And most of the countries, developed countries, they offer this status, but South Asia is privileged to have this initiative or be part of it from European Union countries. So there are certain levels, and all of these 8 countries of somehow with less magnitude or higher, they are part of GSP status of European Union. So there are certain layers. And then the last one is the FTA or the free trade agreement, where all of these countries, including GSP and FTA, these countries can send their, they can trade, they can export to EU region with lower quota or with absolutely no quota and or taxes. So that's the way EU is facilitating this region. But for getting into it, there are certain requirements which EU says, and EU follow the Sustainable Development Goals. So I will discuss it lately, but yes, countries are working so they can meet that criteria and be part of GSP status. For example, Sri Lanka recently, it worked significantly on child labor to be again a part of GSP. By looking at this graph, because I'm an economist, I do more focus on graphical presentations. So look at this graph and you can see the total EU imports and imports under GSP from South Asia. In case of Bangladesh and Pakistan, we can see that EU import highly under GSP status as compared to the other total imports. And in case of India, the situation is almost opposite. India is also a big economy in that region, and yes, they have their own footprint, but in case of GSP, we can see India is big higher than that. And I yesterday, gathered the data and made this graph. You can see that South Asia more or less is the highest, having a highest share of GSP from EU region. And among all of those, Bangladesh is exporting 2.2 billion euros. According to the data in 2022, India is second on that, is 18.8 billion euros, and then Pakistan is 8 billion euro. They have their trade with exports to the EU region. And then rest of the South Asian countries are also part of it, like Indonesia with 7.6 billion euros, Vietnam and Cambodia, and so on and so forth. Looking at this graph, we can see the Bangladesh, which is lower income country, and it has the status of EBA. EBA means everything but arms. So without any quota or anything, they can export to the EU region. And we can see, looking at the 2020 data, it shows the COVID effect. So it got down, but after that, it instantaneously, it is getting its pace. And 2022, we can see a higher number of exports to the EU region. Then specifically looking at the Pakistan, so unfortunately Pakistan, because I belong to that country, so I know the dynamics, we have almost 80% exports based on apparel, clothing, and textile sector, which we need to, Pakistan need to diversify its exports, and others are almost footwear, and but the major chunk is based on apparel, clothing, and textile sector. And looking at the utilization rate of GSP status, which Pakistan have, so we can see from 2019 till 2022, the share of GSP plus in total percentage is increasing, while GSP plus utilization rate and the share duty-free in total is decreasing. So that is the concerning point for the country, and overall, economy of the country is also going down. So, the country, the policymakers should think about it, and they should utilize the GSP plus status, which is a good avenue for the country to export and to diversify and meet the requirements what the EU region needs. And looking at Sri Lanka, the utilization rate, which is also growing, but not on a, in a good pace. In 2020, it was 84.9%, but after that, it is almost, decreasing, which is also not good for the country like Sri Lanka. We have seen the economic and political crisis in the past few years. So they also think about it, and they should increase their utilization and look into it strategically how all of these countries can get benefit of this system and increase their economic and financial issues, especially to get more employment of the people, especially the younger lot in these countries. So there are so many other avenues. The first one was economic avenue. Now we can see the humanitarian support. So in 2008, the EU introduced the Blue Card, a type of work permit aimed at easing skilled labor migration into EU. And Germany is consistently issuing around half of all Blue Cards every year. So, its Blue Card is in so many other countries as well, but in EU region, it is not, very difficult to get in. And like we can see, 9,326 are Indians, and then 723 Pakistani citizens, then 208 Bangladeshis, and 152 are other South Asian people. They got their Blue Cards. So yes, they can, live there, and they can increase their well-being as well. Then EU focusing on promoting human rights, that like rule of law and sustainable development. It is significant donor to most countries and has delegations to India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Maldives, even in Afghanistan. The government-to-government relations are not so, in a way, but in a functional way, but still, they have their footprint over there as well. So on humanitarian basis, we see every other day on the news in their reports that they talk about it and they focus on the humanitarian crisis going on in that part of the world. And then looking at the diplomatic threat, EU has been an observer of South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, which is SARC, since 2006, because all of these countries in this region, they have minor conflicts based on land, some political, some economic issues. So EU is playing its role to avoid any kind of conflict which can happen in this region. And then sustainable urbanization. There's so many other ways, socioeconomic, including renewable energy, transport, sustainable trade, and cybersecurity. And then, yeah, which is very important, terrorism, where EU is also playing its role. So these are the socioeconomic aspects. So all of these countries where in a lesser magnitude or higher, EU have its footprint, which is good and which needs to be enhanced further. Then the very important thing, Russia-Ukraine war. I mean, this war has affected the region in so many ways, and mainly based on oil prices and inflation. And Ukraine, we know, one of the largest wheat exporter. And in South Asia, wheat is mainly a staple food over there. So yes, it is creating a crisis, and but unfortunately, we don't see any bigger impact of EU for this negativity or this negative impact, economic and financial, on this region, which needs to be strategically addressed. And these are the concerns according to the United Nations agreement with the GSP status. And unfortunately, in all of these 8 countries, there are more or less almost the same issues prevail, like political participation. In case of Pakistan, we can see sometimes one party is banned, rest are open. So EU doesn't support it. EU want liberal, and EU says that everybody should have its fair share and its participation, which is really good. And this region really need that, because we have a history of 60, 70 years of doing such kind of things, and it has its bad implications as well. Then freedom of expression, there are sometimes very cruel kind of, criminal offenses, and people get banned because of their expression, and because they express themselves what is inequality going on in the country. And then freedom of association and peaceful assembly. Sometimes we see a lot of chaos in the national assemblies as well. And people fight with each other. Sometimes a group of people are fighting for the real cause, and sometimes there are political and their own concerns remain, and their own interests be there. And then non-discrimination, land and housing rights, which is very, very important to, use the IT, and to have lesser share of anybody else, and to not get the share of any person who has the land ownership. And then labor rights, and most probably the child labor. EU is totally against of it. And then now it's environment and climate, which is very important. So all these areas are more or less very important to work on before going into GSP status. So this is the good point. EU support to fix everything. Then one country can be part of that and get free trade with the EU region. Now, there is lots of opportunities still there. There are some pros and cons as well, but this region needs to work very strategically and look into it, what country needs what from them, and where they can increase their fair share of trade. Unfortunately, the region itself is very lessly connected, and the trade between among all of these countries is very low, almost none. So this is the good avenue to start from there, to export to this region, and then have some liberty to start working within this region. So looking at the skilled labor desire or need in EU region, that is very important point, because most of the South Asian countries have a younger population. In case of Pakistan, we have 60% below the age of 30. So this is the time to train the human resource and send them over there for having more employment and economic prosperity. And then democracy and good governance. This region can learn from EU, and this can be happen through more of communication, more of integration, and more of, dialogues with this region so they can learn and implement in these countries. Then the civil society is the EU works on it, so they can charge or they can train the people, and they can play their positive role for having any kind of conflict or any political, non-political aspect to have harmony and peace in this region. There are a few policy recommendations based on a very small kind of the presentation which I said. So one thing is very unfortunate that EU fails to be a strong and effective political and security actor in the region, lacking visibility in the political discourse and public perception. That really needs to be strategically strengthened. In case of Russia-Ukraine war, and then now we can see the more influence of China and Russia in that region. So there is a need for EU to intervene and play its role for having a very liberal and smooth kind of transition from where these countries are right now to get a positive in the future. And then almost in the coming years, almost every South Asian country will become eligible for preferential access to the EU market under the GSP Plus and EBA schemes. So there is a need to, this transition should be properly managed regarding trade. In case of India, we can see regarding FTA, it took a lot of years to get that fixed. So EU should work on it and to fix this issue and to have a very smooth transition from GSP to another status of trade. Then EU should continue on the path of promoting civil society actors in South Asia with the specific aim of promoting regional civil society cooperation to boost regional integration beyond the political sphere, with the ultimate goal of reducing the potential for conflict in the region. And lastly, in order to foster skilled labor migration, legislation across the EU should streamline and harmonize rules and expand schemes such as the Blue Card, which is very important in that region. And if EU will do it, definitely it will have its very positive implication overall region. Thank you so much.
Thanks a ton, Nadia, for this really holistic view on the situation. And having read your report first and now having listened to your lecture, I guess I'd like to start with this first question. When we look at your policy recommendations, which seem to be very logic according to what you said before, how much time do you think has the EU really to respond? Because, as you rightly mentioned, Russia and China are as well in the game. Sorry, before you answer, I have to mention something I forgot at the beginning. Dear audience, please use the F&A button on your screen in order to put your questions. And we will consider it after a small round of questions from my side. So my question to you, Nadia, how much time do we have? And or should we perhaps alter our expectations?
Yeah, thank you for Charles for asking this question. Yeah, we can see lapse in the previous years or past where EU should start earlier. You're right, but it is late, but still, I think there is a chance and there is a time where EU can play its role, and it needs more integration, more of dialogues with these countries because this region really needs it. And we don't want to go into more controversy or more, diversity, not in a positive sense, rather in a negative way. If we opt such kind of doctrine which these countries have, like, the high influence of Russia and China to that region. But just, I think there's never be too late if we can start from somewhere at least.
Okay, now I welcome as well Ria Schröder, who joined us. Ria, if you have a picture of your photo, hey, welcome. We are so glad you made it.
Yeah, so sorry for the delay. We have some trouble going on, if I may say so.
Yes, of course. We we were informed and we all know and we understand. Perhaps let me briefly introduce you before we come to the next question. Ria Schröder is a member of the Free Democrats parliamentary group in the German Bundestag. She's a lawyer by profession and is also deputy state chairwoman of the FDP in Hamburg and a member of the Federal Executive Board of the Free Democrats. She was federal chairwoman of the Young Liberals until 2020, and as education policy spokesperson for the Free Democrats parliamentary group and member of the Committee for Education, Research and Technology Assessment, she advocates for opportunities for advancement and excellent education regardless of parental background. Very welcome once again. We are extremely happy you made it. If I recall rightly, you visited my wonderful colleague Wolfgang in Sri Lanka, so you really bring fresh information, fresh news from the region back to Germany. You listened, I guess, to the policy recommendations which Nadia just presented once again. I asked about the time we do have. What other obstacles, of course, we always talk about opportunities, but what concrete obstacles do you see? This is a question to Julia and to Birgit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, firstly, if I may, firstly, I would like to thank you for the invitation and also for your understanding for my delay. I'm very happy to be here and for the exchange. As Charles already mentioned, I'm looking much into the region as a member of the friendship group for Germany and South Asia, and so I have been to Sri Lanka this summer and also been on a trip to Nepal and Bangladesh earlier this year, and already planning the next trip to Sri Lanka and Bhutan next year with the group. So it's so I have some fresh information, yes, but also I'm trying to have a broader understanding of the region and not only the singular countries. And I absolutely agree in the perspective of the European Union and Germany having to have a deeper look into the region, not only into India. Of course, everyone is always looking to Russia, to China, to India. Those are also very important players for the South Asian countries, as I understand. And so I think first, one thing I want to mention is that according to a survey published in October this year, the European Union's image in Southeast Asia has improved over the past years. So I think it's great that it comes more to mind, and also especially when I think about the latest Skilled Immigration Act that Germany passed this year. I think there's a lot of not only cooperation or potential for cooperation in the economic and cultural dimension, tourist dimension, which is a big topic in the area, but also for the exchange of work and giving work opportunities in the European Union and in Germany. But I still see that for many in the region, Germany is not the first country to go to. It's more often countries that are nearby and good to reach, easy to reach. Also on a like very simple mobility obstacles. Of course, what I see is very high potential for improvement. Is everything concerned to visa activities, and making it easy to come to the European Union, to Germany, not only for work, but also for education, for skilled trainings. There is in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, we have with the long tradition, the German Ceylon technical training center, which is a product of a common understanding that it's necessary to build up an institution for skilled training in Sri Lanka, which was like 50 years ago, in technical experiences. And I visited that on my stay in Sri Lanka, and there were many young people, and they were saying 90% of them want to work abroad. And if you ask where they want to go on this German Ceylon Sri Lankan Technical Institute, they say they want to go to Australia. And there's a whole community close to Melbourne where people that attended this school are working in the region, and they never come to Germany because it's not an option. It's too hard to come here. Of course, language is a big obstacle. And so I think that is something we really need to do to make it easier on the visa side, to make it easier to integrate for skilled workers in the German society. And also to lower our expectations regarding language abilities, because it's something that you can easily achieve on the working. But if you already need someone to speak fluent German when they arrive, it's a big obstacle. So this is something I would say is something we are working on, but where we still have a lot of potential.
Thank you so much for this input, Ria. I guess it directly guides us to several questions, follow-up questions, meaning when all the instruments are in place, which GSP Plus offers, Birgit, what's your perspective? What went wrong? Because is it the statesman? Is it the people? Or is it the German bureaucracy? Or is it both? So what are, to your point of view, the main reasons why it doesn't work out the way we wish it to work?
Well, if you talk about GSP Plus or GSP, the whole scheme, practically all South Asian countries are in one way or another involved in this scheme, or might be involved in a GSP Plus. This holds true for Pakistan and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, and India is just in the GSP. So these are countries which have easy access to nearly all categories of goods to the European market. But there are different challenges, of course, of these economies. And I mean, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan have huge financial problems. All three of them have gone to the IMF recently. Sri Lanka defaulted last year. Bangladesh had to get support as well. And unfortunately, I have to say about my own country of residence, Pakistan, right now, they are, even in inverted commas, a regular customer of the IMF. They are currently negotiating the 23rd bailout package since its inception in 1947. So there are big issues with the economy going wrong, and there's an issue of competitiveness. And an analysis we've done on GSP actually shows that a lot of the beneficiary countries do not really manage to appreciate and make the best use of these categories. Especially for Pakistan. Unfortunately, Pakistan has only 10 or 11 products which are competitive on the world market, and mainly it exports textiles to Europe, but not the type of textiles that Bangladesh exports, which is basically clothing. And Bangladesh is much better integrated into international value chains, but it's rather towels and bed sheets. And I've just heard one of our economists say, we need more spreadsheets than bed sheets. So actually, the issue that he bluntly says, our countries need to improve their position in the value chain. They need to work on their own educational system. They need to work on good governance. And they need to make use of what the European Union has to offer. GSP basically means free trade with and in exchange for values. And mainly GSP demands the beneficiary countries to comply with international agreements that they've signed anyway, mainly relating to labor law, but also good governance, human rights, freedom of speech, and these issues. And there are quite a few issues in that respect. And the European Union, the last scheme of GSP, expired formally at the end of 2022. And the European Union has just extended that old mechanism until 27, just to have more time with the European Parliament to negotiate the new mechanism. But unfortunately, at least for Pakistan, I believe also for the other countries, I think Sri Lanka also still has a few things to improve. The European Parliament is not really too happy with the implementation and the compliance with these issues, especially when it comes to the situation of civil society. Unfortunately, although all our countries here in South Asia have, let's say, discussions and debates with each other, but the issue that the civil society is under pressure, this is something that they all share. The issue of freedom of speech and also the quality of the democratic system is actually an issue. And yeah, people, as we've already said, want to leave the region. And basically, it's a young region, and nearly all young people would love to catch a job abroad. And naturally, they go to the Gulf states, they go to Australia because it's nearby. Otherwise, it's English-speaking countries, but often also countries where family members already live, so you have like a backup network. And Germany, for example, although it's the biggest economy in the European Union, and the European Union for a lot of these countries is either the second or the third important trade partner, we do not really manage to sell ourselves well and be really attractive for these people. Also, the young people who want to study abroad and then get a degree and hope to stay in their host countries. I know so many of them, but the first choice where they want to grab a scholarship is the US. Then it's the UK, obviously language-wise. Then maybe they even first try for the Scandinavian countries when they didn't get anything for Australia, for the US, or for the UK. And then maybe Germany comes in. And Germany as a third or fourth option is then the option because the fees and the costs for studying here are lower than in the Anglo-Saxon countries where normally tuition fees are incredibly high. That's, I think, not a good way for Germany to tackle the demographic issue. And we should also aim for getting people and young people who really want to make a difference and are also well educated and willing to learn. So in that respect, I think we ourselves need to be more open.
Okay, thank you so much for the statement, I guess, which really compiles all the given facts. But still, I ask myself while listening to you, should we perhaps change our expectations and say, look, of course, with regard to human rights or with regard to rule of law, you of course have time to implement it, but we do not restrict it too much or bound it too much to the support of the countries. I mean, my position is clear, but the question is, Ria, what do you think about it? Would it be perhaps a possibility in order to attract even more countries to accept GSP plus and to stick to it and to profit from it, to change societies, and plus the things you already mentioned. We have bureaucracy, problems with visa, and of course we have to ask ourselves, what do we really want if we have such obstacles for people to come? But when it comes to the rules we implement and we connect with instruments such as GSP or GSP plus, do they really fit the region South Asia, where yes, you have democracies, but sometimes with a lack of press freedom and rule of law is not functioning properly and things like that. So what is your view on that?
So I'm convinced that on the one hand, there are enough players in the world that don't care about civil rights at all. So I think it's a and the second thing is that for societies and for the people living in these countries, I think it's a plus that the European Union and Germany are looking into civil rights and press freedom, because who else is going to put at least any expectation towards society? And in the end, people will profit from that, because a more free society is also, and I'm convinced by that, is also going to profit in economic ways. And so I think there's no need, and it also wouldn't be morally right to lower our expectations in this regards. And I'm convinced that for the development, it's a good thing, because it's sustainable and healthy development when it also goes together with civil freedoms and civil rights.
Thank you for the statement, Nadia. If I come back to your policy recommendations, of course, it's the question not only when they could be implemented or how much time we would use to implement them. But the question is how people, how statesmen will be able really to react on that in European countries, because the European Union is, as you rightly mentioned, very diverse, and countries are different. Take in more or less people from South Asian countries have different offers. What should be our homework, to your point of view?
Yeah, okay. So looking at, as I totally agree with Birgit, she, summarized the whole thing in a very smart way, and I really appreciate her. So, that region mostly based on the youth, and the one thing which is the European countries are offering, and I totally agree, the Birgit, she gave the priorities and shared the people's conception of first getting into US, then Australia and UK, and then in the end to the European region. Sometimes there are language barriers and stuff, but EU is also, European Union countries are also offering scholarships, and I think now is the time. In case of Pakistan, I don't know exact figure, but according to the media reports, I have read in so many different papers that almost 800,000 plus people left the country starting from start of this year. In 2023, it's not completed yet. We are still in November. So because of the political and economic unrest and what the situation going on in this country, people don't have any opportunities, especially the youth bulge, which is 60% of the lower the age of 30. So I think and I also heard so many people are leaving for Uzbekistan, Central Asian countries. Those economies are not so prosperous in a way most of the European countries have. I also agree that there are also a chaotic situation in that region also after the Ukraine war and stuff, and firstly COVID and then this war. But again, there are certain opportunities for the student to get scholarships. Like I worked as a volunteer with that was MSM Erasmus scholarship program. I worked as a volunteer in that, and they offer a really good package with the coverage of everything and stipend included in that scholarship as well. So yes, I think if European Union can play its role as a bigger brother in that region, and it can involve or show more integration with or the talks with this countries of that region, not just the bigger economies. The Maldives, there are a lot of potential of having people or the visitors, tourism in that country. And then other like the smaller ones like Bhutan, Nepal, those are under Indian influence most of the time, which everyone knows. So I think, and Pakistan also, that needs more attention in case of political rest and learn more democracy from that region. So in that aspect, I think EU can play its role, and it can influence the leaders or the policymakers of those countries, and that can play a very healthy role for the youth of the country. Those are the future of the country, because that region is not thinking about the people who are under 30, what will happen after 30 years when they will be 60 or older people, the older generation. So they are not looking at that. I cannot see any policy based on what will happen when this youth will convert into the old age group. So that is a very important area. So I think if they can get any opportunity in this region, that would be really good. And they can also train the human capital, which is very important, to give them skills through their universities, through their institutions, and that can play a very positive role in the economies of that region. Yeah.
Thank you. I guess we always looked to the EU, but of course, the question is in the air, what can the countries themselves do in order to alleviate the pressure, in order to raise opportunities for their citizens? So my question, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry. So I just want to add one thing. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. The training, the skill set, that is important. That learning, and that can be done. If they can influence and they can get fair share from the European countries. And of course, there are other countries as well in that region. But mostly, EU is so nearby, and I think you can play its role in it. Yeah.
Thank you. One question to Birgit and one to Ria, and then I open the floor for other questions. Birgit, as I said, sometimes it depends on the countries themselves what steps they take in order to open up and to connect with other countries, and especially in South Asia, as far as I know, this is a big problem, which Nadia as well described in her excellent report. When it comes to India, I think about the G20 summit and the idea for an India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, which sounds great, but it's a kind of response to China's Belt and Road Initiative. But is it, to your point of view, the right approach to gain confidence among South Asian countries, or is it just a shot into the sky?
I think every initiative which integrates South Asia into value chains and into the international community should be welcome. Unfortunately, South Asia is one of the least integrated regions in the world. The SAARC initiative, which we also had quite a lot of hope in maybe 20 years ago, has basically collapsed, or a lot of people call it even a dead horse. And new cooperation agreements have emerged. India has created cooperation platforms like BIMSTEC, which is like South Asia minus Pakistan. And yeah, because it's like the Sea of Bengal, obviously Pakistan doesn't border the Sea of Bengal. So it's more looking east and trying to get cooperation agreements with neighboring countries, which might not be, let's say, so complicated. And all our regional countries find it quite difficult actually to cooperate on various issues. And there are huge issues that the region should cooperate on. Water management is a huge issue. Climate change is a huge issue. And also in terms of regional economic cooperation. Countries like Pakistan, of course, India, Pakistani business people would dream of trading directly with India and being able, maybe from Punjab, to transport and travel from Delhi to Europe. It would actually make opportunity costs for them much, much cheaper. But unfortunately, in the current political scenario, this is not possible. So in that respect, I feel there's a lot of responsibility, and also in the past have been quite a few opportunities lost in terms of creating wealth and prosperity for the citizens in this region. And of course, first of all, it's their own governments and their own states which need to create prosperity for its citizens. But I think nowadays, no country can actually survive as an island. We all need to cooperate with our neighbors and also globally. And this is like the word of the day. And I would also endorse what Ria Schröder just said. We shouldn't lower our standards on good governance and international law. I mean, it's not only in this region that there are lots of stakeholders who try to weaken democratic frameworks, who try to weaken good governance, and also try to weaken rule of law principles. And a lot of the citizens and of civil society actually hope that stakeholders like the European Union will raise their voice and call for these standards, because they themselves find it very often very difficult to call for it, especially when they belong to marginalized groups like religious or ethnic minorities or women. That's also a big issue. And in that respect, I think the EU does need to play a role, but you also need to be careful that you stick to your own standards. I mean, you cannot only in one way advocate for rule of law, and then when strategic interests come into play, then you suddenly you're not so picky about your values anymore, because then you get a credibility issue. And at least speaking here for Pakistan, Western or industrialized countries already do have some credibility issues here with the general population, because they do not always, let's say, stick faithfully to the values that they propose. But I think it still is a selling point, maybe not with the governments and not with many powerful stakeholders, but I think for the citizens of these countries, they are all hoping for a better framework which is more open, and also that gives them more rights and more opportunities, and also rule of law. that they can be actually sure that their rights will be respected.
Okay, thank you so much. Coming briefly back to Ria, and then connecting your question, Ria, with the question of one of our esteemed listeners. Don't hesitate to post more questions if you'd like to. He or she is asking how the EU is contributing in the capacity building of youth in South Asia in IT sector, enabling them to work in European market without migration. So because you traveled South Asia, you have a big interest in it, and perhaps you got some ideas and impression on that.
Yeah, I only laughed because you could also ask the question what European countries are doing for the IT education in their own countries, which is also something I would say we are not the biggest still working on that, but so I'm not sure when it comes especially to the IT sector, but maybe I can tell about another institution that I visited in Nepal, which is very young institute for skills and training, where young people from Nepal are prepared to do a training in Germany, and then they complete the training in Germany, and after that they are free to choose if they want to stay in Germany or go back to Nepal. So it's what I like about it is that you don't have to focus on so you have very strong individual decision that is promoted, and skilled training is something that we need in Germany, but which can also play a big role in improving the capacity building in Nepal. So giving opportunities to younger people by opening up small businesses and giving them economic perspectives in their own country, which I think is as important as our interest in getting skilled workers from the region and giving them opportunities in Germany. So this is, I think, a wonderful project which also gives a lot of environment in Germany. Good, I mean, it's young people between the age of 16 and 25 who are far away from home, and it's very costly to visit the family. So I think it's important to give them a network and also support in from the business side, but also on the social side. So that is something I wanted to share. And maybe one comment on what Birgit Lamm said, because I think when it comes to the EU, a huge obstacle that we have is that also the EU is not always talking in one voice. We still, I mean, we saw that recently when it comes to the commenting on the Middle East, Gaza, Israeli conflict and the terror attacks from Hamas, where it was not very clear who is the one talking for the European Union, who is the one who is in charge, and a consistent foreign policy is something that from a liberal perspective would be very welcome, but is still something in the process. So sometimes it's not easy to say what is the EU saying in this or that issue. So I think that is also something that we have to work on when it comes to credibility and to be a good partner and to be someone you can rely on when it comes to especially civil rights and freedoms.
Thank you so much. I guess these were already the final words because our event now comes to an end. I thank you all for participating. I think especially Nadia for writing this excellent report to raise these significant questions, which we will deal with for the coming years. But at least we have to face our challenges in order to find then well the adequate responses to it. I thank Ria Schröder, who made it possible still to come to join us and to give her comment and ideas when it comes to this topic. And of course, my wonderful colleague Birgit Lamm. Thank you, all the three of you, to have to join me for this round of discussion. Of course, we are never finished with this, but this is an intriguing topic, and since we hold the region dear to our hearts, I guess we will meet again. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, dear audience, for participating, for listening, for commenting, and hope to see you again. Thank you.